Phase 4 for Season of Discovery has finally arrived, and we can now start to chase our Pre-Bis ready to start raiding the world bosses on July the 18th and Molten Core and Elixir on July the 25th. And for the Retribution Paladin, you have two different routes to aim for Pre-Bis, depending on the playstyle you're going to play. That being either the fast exodin playstyle, which is pretty much the exo spam playstyle we've been using for the past few phases now, or you can either go for the slow twisting playstyle, which utilizes slow weapons and seal twisting. In Pre-Bis and early game gearing, the fast exodin playstyle will likely outperform seal twisting, so with that we'll start off with the Pre-Bis set for the fast exodin playstyle. First up we have the head slot, and we'll be aiming to get the Soulforge Great Helm, which is the tier 0.5 helmet from the tier 0.5 questline. This headpiece is extremely good and will likely stay with us past Pre-Bis and actually be Bis for us during phase 1. Until you can manage to get this, you should be just fine using either the Blacksmithing Helmet from phase 2 or the Great Helm of the Nightmare from Sunken Temple. The enchant you'll want to pair with this headpiece is Arcanum of Rapidity for 1% increased haste. For the next slot we're going to be using Mark of Fordring from the quest called In Dreams in Western Plaguelands. It is pretty much looking to be tied with Amulet of the Dark Moon, however much easier to obtain, which is why we'll aim to grab that instead. In the shoulder slot we're looking to pick up the tier 0.5 Soulforge Spolders, which will pair with the helmet to give us a 2-set bonus. Until you manage to get these, the Arathi Bazin Highlander Spolders, which requires Exalted with Arathi Bazin if you have that reputation, otherwise keep using the Blacksmithing Shoulders or Fanaticism from Sunken Temple to utilise the hit if needed. We'll still be using the Attalai Signet of Might enchant on our shoulders. I'm not too sure if this is going to be possible later on, whether they're going to patch this or change this, but for now it's looking that we can use that Attalai Signet of Might on our shoulders. Moving on to the cloak, there's two solid options, with our Pre-Bis cloak being Cloak of the Honor Guard from Exalted with Arathi Bazin. Alternatively, if you are not yet Exalted, you can pick up Cape of the Black Baron from Strathholm. The enchant we're going to be sticking on our cloak is Lesser Agility. As for the chest, we'll be sticking with a 3-piece Sunken Temple set, which will also likely stay Bis as well as Pre-Bis for us going into the rest of the phase. If you do however not have the set from Sunken Temple because you've not been playing during the previous phases, you should aim to get the Savage Gladiator chain from the BRD Arena. The enchant you'll want is +4 to all stats. The wrist slot will be using Berserker Bracers, which is from having Exalted reputation with Warsong Gulch, which if you don't have you can opt for Soulforge Bracers as they are only slightly worse in stats, and the best enchant to put on your bracers will be +9 strength. For the gloves, we'll be aiming to get Fiery Plate Gauntlets, which will also likely be Bis gloves for Exodin. The reason why you'll be aiming to grab these gloves is that the fire proc has a chance to crit, meaning it synergizes very well with Art of War and lowers the cooldown on Exorcism. You'll want to grab Minor Haste enchant for 1% increased attack speed bonus. Moving on to the waist slot, the Pre-Bis belt we'll be aiming to grab is the Brigham Girdle from General Drakisaf in Upper Blackrock Spire. It's one of the few slots we'll be aiming to get our hit chance from and will later be replaced with another hit piece in Molten Core being Onslaught Girdle. That's the reason we aren't typically aiming for the new crafted belt from Argent Dawn reputation. The legs will be the same story as the chest and we'll be using the 3-piece from Sunken Temple as the 3-piece bonus is just too good. A great alternative if you do not have the set from Sunken Temple can be the Exalted Warsong Gulch legs, Sentinel Plate leg guards. The leg enchant we'll be using will be Arcanum of Rapidity for 1% increased haste. Following this, the Pre-Bis boots and likely Bis boots we'll still be using will also be the 3-piece from Sunken Temple, while optionally going for the tier 0.5 Soulforge wall boots if you do not have the Sunken Temple set. Your best boot enchant will be Greater Agility. The best pair of Pre-Bis rings we'll be aiming to grab will be the Resin Loop from the new Demon Fall Canyon dungeon and the Protector's Band from being revered with Warsong Gulch. Alternatively, if you're not revered, you could get the Painweaver Band from General Drakisaf in the Upper Blackrock Spire. There are a ton of hit options for the ring slots if you're missing hit, but with the getting 3% hit from talents, you likely won't need to grab any hit rings, so you should definitely aim for the Resin Loop and Protector's Band. For the trinkets, as expected, Hand of Justice will be absolutely solid, and it drops from Emperor in the Blackrock Depths. And the Accursed Chalice from the new dungeon Demon Fall Canyon is also looking to be our second Pre-Bis trinket, as it has a very good on use proc that can be lined up with our Avenging Wrath. The Chicken Trinket from either Gnomeregan or Engineering will always still potentially be situationally Bis, because 5% stackable haste for the entire party is never nothing to sniff at. Onto the weapons. It's currently looking all a little bit in the air if the blacksmithing weapons are bind on pickup or bind on equip, but it does appear as though they will be actually bind on equip, as they seem to have changed a few times within the first day of the phase 4 launch, However, you should definitely check and find out for sure if it's BOE or BOP when you're going for your Pre-Bis yourself before acquiring the mats to craft it. That being said, if you are a blacksmith and a swordsmith, it doesn't matter regardless, and the refined Arcanite champion will be the Pre-Bis weapon and potentially Bis, as we're still not totally sure if it beats Typhoon or not from the world boss raid, which can technically I guess not be called Pre-Bis as it's from a world boss raid, but you can decide on that terminology yourself. The only problem currently is that to be able to craft the refined Arcanite champion, you need elemental sharpening stones, which meaning the upgraded version of Arcanite champion right now is currently unavailable until Molten Core releases, and your pre-Molten Core release Pre-Bis will be Impervious Giant from Chester 7 in Blackrock Depths, or slightly worse, still using Sulph Rays from last phase. However, when the elemental sharpening stones are available, you'll be able to craft the refined Arcanite champion for your Pre-Bis. The enchant you'll be aiming to go for will be the Crusader enchant. Lastly, for the Librum, we have no new good damaging Librums, and we'll likely be running Librum of the Consecrated for 70% reduced mana cost on Consecration, and will be obtainable from the new dungeon Demonfall Canyon. If you're fighting a Dragonkin, you'll still want to be using the old Blood Moon Librum, and likewise if you're fighting undead, you'll want the Librum from Black Fathom Depths. This will be your full Pre-Bis setup for Exodin. If you however choose to go for the slow twisting playstyle, the list changes slightly and will cover only the changes. Firstly, for the bracers, you'll want to be aiming for the tier 0.5 Soulforged bracers, as we're going to be using the 4-piece tier 0.5 set over the Warsong Gulch bracers. Likewise with the gloves, we no longer will need the Fiery Plate gauntlets, and we'll switch those for the tier 0.5 Soulforged gauntlets to round up the 4-piece tier 0.5 set. The only other change will be your Pre-Bis weapon. Instead of going for the refined Arcanite champion, you'll be aiming to grab the extremely nice and slow 4.0 speed refined Arcanite Reaper instead. The same story applies here, where you'll need to grab some elemental sharpening stones to be able to craft the weapon, and the pre-Molten Core best in slot twisting weapon will likely be the Unstoppable Force from Exalted Alterac Valley Reputation. And there we have it, both Pre-Bis setups for the Ret Paladin in Phase 4. If there's anything else you'll be aiming to get instead of what's listed here, let me know down below, and I hope you all have a great time gearing for Pre-Bis, and keep your eyes peeled because at some point I'll be releasing a full Retribution guide for Phase 4, and thanks for watching.